Have you ever tried to turn a key in a lock when the lock is stuck? Well, I have. And you know that you can quickly turn one problem into three problems? Because if you try to force a key to turn a lock and the lock just won't turn, then if you break the key off in the lock, then still the door's not open. Now you have a key stuck in the lock and also your key's broken. So you need a new key. And this is in the series of the book, Discover the Power Within You by Eric Butterworth. And this is chapter 8, The Law of Non-Resistance. And I like that this chapter is called The Law of Non-Resistance because I'm interested in the laws of being, which is the Fillmores, founders of Unity. They taught and they talked about laws of being. And when I first came across this phrase and started studying, I was resistant to the word law because I want to be free. I don't want to be constrained. I don't want somebody to tell me how I have to live. And what helped me is the teaching that laws of being are the eternal expressing as action and relationship in this universe. So laws of being are not about judgment and punishment. We're not good if we're aware of laws of being, and we're not bad if we don't live with laws of being or in accordance with laws of being. And as Reverend Jim teaches in Unity, we don't subscribe to a judgmental God who punishes and rewards. So laws of being are just the way the universe is set up to operate. They're like the rules of the game. And in any game, all the rules are about actions and relationships. For example, in baseball, if the pitcher hits the batter with a pitch, the batter gets to go to first base. So laws of being govern actions and relationships, and we're free to break those laws and deal with the consequences. So chapter 8, the law of non-resistance is a law of being. And Carl Jung said it most succinctly, what we resist persists. Non-resistance is balance. It's equilibrium. It's a state of living in harmony and calm. You can actually think of non-resistance as a passive state. When we get activated, then we have energy around something, and then we're out of balance about it. And we will remain out of balance until we complete that conversation, until we resolve that issue. So here's a simple example. I'm going to try to mention something obscure that's probably not in an active state in most of our minds. We could say that we're in a passive state. And the topic is Peruvian food, Peruvian cuisine. Now, again, most of us probably aren't thinking about this until I said that. But if I tell you that next week, I'm bringing in a Peruvian chef, and this person's going to cook a 6-course traditional Peruvian meal, and you're all invited. So now we become active about that thought. We might think, well, what are traditional Peruvian ingredients? What spices do they use? Am I gonna like it? Is it within my diet? Just all kinds of stuff can become active when something is in our conversation, when it's in our minds. And the same is true for our personal stories. When we tell stories about our past, stories about the situations that have affected us, we can get activated with feelings and emotions about those topics. And that shows us that those conversations are not complete, that those issues are not resolved. Now, this doesn't mean that we should act like we don't care. It's not effective to act like something is resolved when it isn't. So again, this is not about glossing over things. It's very important that we acknowledge our feelings, that we name our feelings, that we feel our feelings. We have examples of people who embody stillness, who embody non-resistance. And we can see that wise, spiritually mature people, they're genuinely calm and centered. They're in a state of non-resistance, which again can be described as balance and harmony. And for me, someone who comes to mind is Eckhart Tolle, the author of Power of Now and Speaking Stillness, or Stillness Speaks, and other books. I mean, that guy, it seems like if chaos is breaking out all around him, he's going to remain composed. You know, like a fire could break out in the building and he'd be like, let's proceed in an orderly fashion to the exits. It just seems like he's very, very centered, right? And in mythology, we also have this archetype of the wise old man. And mythology is very important because it reveals the human condition. It tells us stories about how we are in the world. So we have Gandalf from The Lord of the Rings, Yoda from Star Wars, Albus Dumbledore from the Harry Potter series. And these archetypes, the archetype of this wise old man, they seem like they accept what is without making the situation worse. They don't, create chaos and add to drama. They seem to know what actions to take to be effective. In Discover the Power Within You, Eric Butterworth uses Jesus as an example. And he has examples of how Jesus in his ministry taught and embodied and demonstrated non-resistance. So Jesus taught that we should resolve our own problems before we point out the flaws of others, for example. So why do we get upset? This is from the work of Nathaniel Newby. It's not published yet, but we're working on it. One reason, or one way that we can view upset, is that we get upset when one of our standards has been violated. We have all kinds of standards that help us navigate through life. There's innumerable options and choices and possibilities. So we use standards to give structure to our lives. For example, we have standards about how we want to be treated. We have standards about how we manage a household, about how we celebrate holidays. We have standards for pretty much every activity that we engage in. And often our standards are hidden. We're not conscious of what our standards are. We're not conscious that we're operating with standards in place. So we may not be aware of them. The more important a standard is to us, then the more upset we tend to get when that standard is violated. For example, if you're a person who has a high standard for orderliness, then you might tend to get more upset with disorder than someone with more lax standards about organization. So how do we resolve upsets? The key is resolving upsets internally instead of externally. Instead of blaming someone or something or some condition, we can figure out what's happening internally and why. So again, we can recognize our standards. We can recognize that we feel like our standard has been violated, and we can take responsibility for those standards instead of blaming others. When we are in an upset with another person, it's not effective to tell people that their standards are bad and wrong. It's not effective to attack people's standards because that undermines their existence. And we have standards for existing. We get to exist, and we get to exist with our standards. So here's a personal example. I've been studying with Nathaniel Newby, who's a teacher of this work. Been studying with him for 3 years. We've worked on several books, and the last few months I've been kind of stalled. What do I do next? I don't know. Not really sure. And in preparing for this talk, I realized that I have a standard about publishing. I was an English major in college, and my standard is that books are published by established publishing houses. And people, a string of people have been telling me lately that today is a new paradigm. You know, today everybody can have basically a TV channel on YouTube. They can have a radio station with podcasts. Everybody could be a publishing house. So, I'm realizing that I can adapt to the new paradigm and not stay stuck, in my old standard. My old standard, may not be effective in this situation. Now, here's an example in the world. I hope that everyone has standards for honesty and integrity and civility. But it's very easy to see today lots of examples of hypocrisy and propaganda and divisiveness. And, I feel like the antidote to the name calling, the anger, the divisiveness is to reveal light. And that's what we're called to do. The antidote for the upset in the world is to create space for joy and clarity and understanding. So again, laws of being are the way this universe is set up to operate, and they govern actions and relationships. The law of non-resistance is a law of being. And again, Carl Jung said it best, what we resist persists. When we push against ideas, situations, and feelings, they tend to grow stronger. In fact, Carl Jung's full quote about this is, what you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. He said it will grow in size. So for best results, instead of focusing on things like books, tables, computers, we can focus on actions and relationships. So I can ask myself, how am I interacting? Are my actions effective for well-being in this situation? What results am I producing through my actions? How are my relationships? How am I relating to objects, to people, to conditions, to situations? When we're upset, we're not upset about things. We're upset that one of our standards has been violated. For example, if I hang a picture on the wall and the picture crashes to the ground, I'm not upset at the picture. I'm upset because I have a standard that if I put a stationary object somewhere, it's going to stay there. Or that picture hooks can hold pictures, or that walls can hold pictures up. So again, it's the standards that I have. There's a quote from the book here, Discover the Power, about this. It's on page 101 in chapter 8 here. What matters to us in reality is not people or things or conditions, but the thoughts and feelings we harbor concerning them. It is not the conduct of others, but our reaction to it that makes or mars our life experience. So again, it's not about what's out there, people, conditions, things, but it's about our thoughts, our feelings, our reactions, what's coming up for us, what standards do we have, what do we feel has been violated, how are we getting triggered? It's our reaction that can enhance or detract from the experience that we're having. So when we're upset, we can ask ourselves, what standard do I feel is being violated here? When we can recognize and acknowledge the standards that are in question, then we can diffuse situations and return to balance and harmony. And again, this isn't about ignoring problems or trying to avoid them. When we ignore little upsets, they can fester and become large breakdowns. And if we discount our concerns, then we're degrading our dignity. We're actually affirming that our existence doesn't matter. So if I say, oh, it's just a little thing, I shouldn't be bothered, it's not important, I don't want to make a big deal out of it, I'm just going to ignore it and go away. When we do that over and over again, we're degrading our dignity, we're undermining our own existence. So again, I'm not saying, make a huge drama out of a small thing, but I'm just saying that it's good to acknowledge what's going on for us. And we can tell what's going on with our bodily reactions and with our conversations. It's a biolinguistic state, the state of our body and our mind together, creating a conversation. So spiritual and emotional maturity means using our upsets as opportunities to complete conversations, to resolve issues. And by that, I mean figuring out what we can release and release it. Karma is incompletion in our conversation. It's incompletion in our existence. So when we don't resolve issues, when we don't complete conversations, we get to do them again. So again, the resolution isn't about changing other people. You know, we can't control or change other people to meet our needs. It's about finding balance and harmony within our own being so that we can reveal more light in the world. When we show up calm and clear, then we can offset fear and confusion. We're called to be light. Light makes vision possible. Light is the revealer. Light is also the opposite of heavy. So we're called to be that which allows for the operation of seeing, and we're called to be that in a way that is not heavy and not burdensome. So we're not, casting blame on other people. So non-resistance is that state of being resolved, of existing in equilibrium, of completing conversations so they disappear. Non-resistance means not pushing back and not getting activated about something. As we resolve issues, we become lighter. We become unburdened. We become more transparent and less heavy. So as we resolve issues, we lessen the drama of our reactions, and we live in awareness of this law of non-resistance. Amen.